Good evening. I'd like to call to order the April 1st, 2019 Common Council meeting for the City of Lawrence. At this time, will you please stand? Say our pledge and a prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Most precious and high one, we come to you today with very humble hearts. We ask that you continue to look over our great city of Lawrence. Lord, we ask that you continue to keep our city and our citizens safe and in your favor. Lord, we ask that you continue to watch over our public safety workers, our firemen and our policemen. But most importantly, God, we ask that you just look over our families and their comings and goings from work and school in our city here in Lawrence. And we ask all these things in your most precious and high name. Amen. Amen.
I have determined that we do have a quorum. At this time, I'd like to ask Chief Dave Hoffman from the City of Lawrence Police Department. There's been a question by a council member or two regarding some animal shelter questions, and I think you have some information to share to the council.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
As the head of the department in Lawrence charged with providing animal service in response to animal incidents, I would like to provide a deeper evaluation of the statistics regarding animals transported to the Indianapolis Animal Control Services facility at 2600 South Harding Street in the past 2 years. The dates ranging from January 1st, 2017 through December 31st of 2018. In that time frame, according to the director of IACS, there were a total of 126 animals brought to IACS's intake door from citizens of Lawrence or by Lawrence animal control officers. 82 of those animals were adopted, 28 were returned to their owners, 10 were humanely euthanized, 2 were sent to foster homes, 2 cats were part of a TNR program, which that refers to trapping, neuter, returning, typically feral cats. And 2 died in transport after suffering life-threatening injuries before being picked up. I asked my animal control officer about that. He did not remember in his time having any animals die in his care, so I speculate those 2 animals may have died in the hands of private owners. Let's see. It is the policy of IACS that after a minimum of 32 business hours are up, an animal surrendered to IACS is evaluated, and their managers and supervisors route the animal for adoption, rescue, foster, transfer, or in some cases, humane euthanasia. These numbers reveal that 91% of animals transported to IACS from Lawrence were ultimately placed in healthy situations and were not euthanized. Other privately funded facilities, such as Indy Humane, report that they have a similar placement rate. Theirs is 90%. Although I was not a member of this administration in 2015, it has been brought to my attention that the concept of opening an animal shelter in Lawrence was discussed in many circles, and that there was a very high interest in exploring this as a possibility here in Lawrence. There's no doubt, we can all agree, that the safety and welfare of our pets and other stray animals is not only a priority, but also a public safety concern, particularly among vulnerable citizens such as children and the elderly. That's one of many reasons why we employ a full-time animal control officer on the Lawrence Police Department who remains on call when not on duty and a part-time animal control officer who typically works evening hours. One of our animal control officers is a former IACS employee, and the other is currently employed full-time by IACS. Like every other community in Marion County, we have an excellent, cost-effective working relationship with IACS, spending on average less than $300 a month for their animal shelter services, or about $10 a day. Mayor Collier's preliminary research in 2016 revealed that the cost to open and operate an animal shelter in Lawrence would be astronomical, especially compared to the $300 a month we spend for shelter services. His cost comparison analysis takes into account the following estimates of what it would cost to open a Lawrence shelter. $160,000 a year in salaries for staffing 4 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee, working up to 40 hours a week at various days and hours at a conservative rate of $17 an hour. An estimated $70,000 to $90,000 in employee benefits, such as health insurance, benefit leave time, and retirement contributions. The shelter would need to be open more than just 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, with some animals requiring around-the-clock care. Overtime compensation should certainly be expected. Water and electricity would cost $150 a month. Food, medicine, health care, cost of supplies, facility security, and maintenance would likely exceed $1,000 a month. Most animal shelters carry insurance policies that vary in cost, but are more expensive for shelters that allow untrained, unpaid volunteers to interact with animals with unknown behavioral and health conditions. It has been mentioned that a Lawrence shelter would rely heavily on volunteers, including children, any of whom could be subject to dog bites and cat scratches. The cost to renovate the properties in Lawrence that have been mentioned as possible locations could exceed hundreds of thousands of dollars, with extensive repairs needed at the Shadeland Avenue property just to make it habitable, and that does not include any renovations to make it a shelter. Pest and insect control in an animal shelter is estimated to cost $150 a month, depending on levels of infestation of insects such as fleas, ticks, or other bugs that would be attracted to where animal food is stored. For a no euthanize shelter, keep in mind that the average cost of owning a cat ranges from $800 to $1,100 a year. And when it comes to dogs, the average cost of dog ownership and maintenance is between $1,400 and $2,000 a year. There are other expenses associated with the care of agricultural animals that would be surrendered as well, which would certainly happen. As a Lawrence animal shelter that does not engage in euthanasia, one can logically expect that this would be a premier location for animal owners all over central Indiana to surrender animals with a clear conscience and knowledge that the city of Lawrence would bear the cost of housing their animals for the rest of their lives, even ones with severe medical conditions requiring expensive healthcare procedures, and those who are dangerous, vicious, and unadoptable. It would essentially be an extended stay hospital and hotel sponsored by Lawrence taxpayers. Many of the animals that come into a shelter will face severe medical issues due to terrible abuse and neglect. These animals will require even more financial investment. Based on the numbers I mentioned from the past 2 years, it is clear there's currently very low demand and no need for such a costly facility here in Lawrence. The fiscal obligations that would be associated with the establishment and sustainable operation of an animal shelter make the idea illogical and irrational, especially given the excellent and affordable working relationship we have with Indianapolis Animal Care Services, which is a professional, well-trained group with a long proven history of service to all Marion County residents. If there were to be an appropriation of hundreds of thousands of dollars for a shelter we don't need, it's important to note that these funds would certainly be diverted away from public safety, which would certainly impact pay raises for our first responders, funds for equipment, and training for first responders. The information I just presented is what Mayor Collier discovered after promising to look into the matter thoroughly, which he did in 2016, with the assistance of many other stakeholders, private and municipal. Now, we do strive to be open to suggestions on the Lawrence Police Department on how we can do more to improve the level of animal services. We have purchased a new animal control van equipped with a microchip reader to reduce the number of trips that we make to IACS. Microchipping is an affordable procedure that many responsible pet owners choose to employ to assist in locating their pets. We work to return animals to their homes here in Lawrence before transporting them to IACS, which is a last resort option. We are cognizant that Lawrence residents should be spared making the 18-mile trip each way to retrieve their lost pet when at all possible. We will therefore deliver pets to their homes for free when we identify an owner. Our full-time ACO, Nathan Cheek, recently attended specialized training on animal abuse and neglect investigations hosted by the Johnson County Sheriff's Department and Prosecutor's Office. I take his job preparedness very seriously. We are considering a partnership with local veterinarians to allow our Lawrence pets to be cared for in local clinics until an owner can pick up their pet. This would further reduce trips to IACS. Lost pets being reunited with their families has been significantly improved with the recent proliferation of social media sites such as Nextdoor, Facebook, Twitter, and other popular websites such as petfinder.com, findtoto.com, Craigslist, and petfbi.com, to name only a few. Those are all great websites, by the way. I do appreciate the passion and desire of many counselors to keep this issue as an ongoing part of the dialogue in Lawrence. But at the end of the day, Marion County, or Mayor Collier will not make a decision to pursue something that is fiscally irresponsible. Members of the Lawrence Police Department clearly care about dogs and cats and their health and welfare. It's just that a shelter is not feasible, needed, nor sustainable if it is to be tax funded. Last year, Mayor Collier requested funding for an objective, professional animal shelter feasibility study, which would have shed more light on the subject, but that request was denied in the budget. Finally, when I evaluate all angles of this non-emotional analysis, I agree that the idea of an animal shelter in Lawrence is simply unnecessary and impractical.
Thank you, Chief Hoffman. And any council members that has further questions, it's been requested that you please put them in writing and send them directly to Chief Hoffman and carbon copy, Council President, and our council attorney.
Can I get a copy of that for the minutes? Because I couldn't write that fast.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Wells?
as everybody knows, this shelter has been a bit of a passion of mine. And this is the first time that the administration has said anything about it. The administration has been allowed to give its version of an animal shelter in public as to why it's not feasible, not plausible. I would think that a little bit of time for any of the counselors to have to rebuttal should be allowed.
I understand that, but this is not a debate, and this isn't a forum for rebuttal. This was a request by, I believe, you to have someone from the administration come and provide facts and information about the animal shelter, which Chief Hoffman has done. As I said, if you have any further questions or any follow-up, please put them in writing to Chief Hoffman, carbon copy, our council president, and our council attorney. It's the appropriate way to take this matter forward. So. Moving on the agenda.
I just got a quick question. I didn't hear the number. I believe he said from January 1st, 2016 to 2018, was it 126 animals? I didn't hear.
That's what he said.
Okay, thank you.
2017, sir.
From,
2-year period.
2017.
okay, thank you.
So this time on the agenda is comments of the council and special recognitions or resolutions.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank Jim Hennigan and the DPDW crew. I noticed they were out at 49th and Mitchner and cleaning out the sewer, and that's been an ongoing thing for a long time, and I know the neighbors there are very appreciative. Also, I'd like to talk about, last month, we talked about the Department of Works of the $725,000 on the uptakes on the police station. And I wanted to give kudos to Tracy Ashcraft for speaking up and doing her due diligence and getting almost $250,000 back on that. And then Also, the piggyback on Counselor Freeman, which I've been asking for a long time, is what can we do as a council to provide more police officers to your police department? Either raise taxes or whatever we have to do. I just feel like we need more police officers out there. I feel like our numbers have not increased since 2016. We want to help you. We need you to tell us how we can help you. What do we have to do to get more police officers on the street? Thank you.
Any other council members?
Yes. Oh,
Counselor Giles?
okay. Yes, thank you. Hey, this past today is Monday, so we had a decent rain. I think that was Friday, I believe. Where rain, or was that Saturday? Saturday, when it rained most of the day. As many of you know, we have flooding issues and water issues in my neighborhood, in my home. So when I saw the water and stuff in my yard, I went to 48th and Menchner, in between 48th and 49th. I have video, and I also talked to some of the residents in the area. It was less water at 48th and Menchner, between 48th and Menchner and 49th Street than there is in Brookhaven, and actually at my house at the corner of Meadowview. I also walked in people's yards. There was water in some of the guys' yards, as there are in ours, but I can honestly say, and I have video at that corner, there's 4 drains draining just fine. I also asked, and I talked to the gentleman who came in here before and did his testimony, and I asked him about the last time we've had significant floods. 2013 is a lot of what folks are speaking of. This is straight from the guy's mouth. And I talked to residents there. So I want to commend whatever we've been doing in the last few years seems to be much improved from what I had heard and seen, and I documented, and I will continue to be over there throughout the spring, making sure, and also in 2013 when 48th and Menchner flooded real bad, the whole neighborhood did over there. So that's the diligence we're doing. We're trying to get that right, and I appreciate all the guys working on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members?
If I may.
Counselor Wells?
I'm real familiar with the 48th and Menchner, Counselor Giles, and I have photographs on my phone. I have to do some research to find them, but the first year we took office, I have photographs of the storm sewers backing up and basically flooding clear up to the front porches of several of the houses in those intersections. And it has happened since then. It hasn't happened, I don't believe, this year, or maybe even last year. Well, not this year, but definitely I don't think it happened last year. But it has happened. And being that that's in my district, I'm very familiar with it. But, and I also would like to thank Chief Hoffman for at least giving us some address about the shelter that I've been asking about for a number of meetings. I respectfully disagree with a lot of the mayor's points, and it would have been nice, had we had heard from him directly, but because I've been asking him directly, seeing as how he is the one that promised it, we didn't get a promise to be looked into a shelter. We were promised a shelter. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members? All right, seeing none, moving on. Approval of minutes, regular meeting of March 4th and March 20th, 2019. Do I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
There's a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any comments, conversation? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor? By show of hands? Unanimous. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is signing of the vouchers, approval of claims, and authorization of payment. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
A second.
It's been motioned second. Is there any comments regarding these vouchers? Yes, sir.
I got one on page 5 of 9 at the very top. There's a chart.
Page 5-9?
It says page 5 of 9.
Oh, 5 of 9. I'm sorry. Okay.
It's at the very top, invoice 0118191 for Veterans Park concession for $3,450. And I was just curious what that was for. When I was on the board at OIO, We took care of the concessions, so I'm just curious what that charge is for.
It's for 3,450?
3,450.
All right. Duly noted, thank you. I don't have the answer to that, I'm not the controller. Any other? All right, all those in favor, by show of hands? All those opposed? It's passed, thank you. Next on the agenda is the reports of the committee. There were none. Unfinished, there were none. Comments of the administration?
There is none.
Next topic is citizens' comments. He didn't. Thank you. We have one tonight, Linda Moore. And just state your address for the record, thank you.
4909 Leone Drive. I want to say thank you to Chief Hoffman for at least sharing the animal services information. As many times as we've asked for that information, it's interesting to finally get some numbers and some details, and I think it would have been really good for that type of information to be shared a year ago, 2 years ago. I still think there's probably much room for improvement on that, given the number of animals we actually have in Lawrence and where those licensing fees are actually going. Also want to commend the city workers that were out picking up trash today, out along Pendleton Pike, I believe. And I would like to see what can be done with the businesses so that they clean up their own parking lots, adjacent fence lines, areas out in front of their parking lots, because if that trash is picked up, as they do in other cities and towns, that would eliminate at least some of the trash that's out there along the streets. So I challenge you guys to talk to businesses and see what we actually can do, because it is their responsibility if they have a high litter business like some of our fast food restaurants. If they're not cleaning up, we can't keep up with it. And I almost brought my bag of trash bags in today to challenge everybody here to do the one bag challenge, where, you know, it does us great to talk about that trash all out there, but if you're not out there picking it up, you're not helping the situation either. So, and my last thing is, if we've got that ordinance on basketball goals, we really need to be looking at it, because this weekend, the goals down a couple streets over were out, and we had like 5-year-olds out playing in the street. And so I know the ordinance basically says those goals have to be situated so that the playing field is not in the street. So that really needs to be looked at as our police and other officials are driving through those neighborhoods, because if it's like right now, the sun's right on 49th Street, it's very hard to see those children playing, and there is not an adult out there supervising. So I thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you. We are adjourned.